Sophie had always been a hard worker. From a young age, she knew the value of earning an honest living. After her parents passed away, leaving her to care for her younger siblings, Sophie took on various jobs to make ends meet. Eventually, she found steady work as a housemaid for the Kensingtons, one of the wealthiest families in town. The Kensington mansion was a sprawling estate, complete with immaculate gardens, luxurious rooms, and a staff of dozens. Sophie quickly became a trusted member of the household, known for her diligence and kindness. Despite the challenges, she managed to keep her spirits high, always reminding herself that she was doing this for her family. One sunny afternoon, the staff was buzzing with excitement. The owner's daughter, Isabel Kensington, was coming home after years abroad. She had left for college in Europe and had since been living in Paris, working in fashion. The house was in a frenzy, everyone preparing for her arrival. Sophie was tasked with preparing Isabel's old room. As she dusted the shelves and arranged fresh flowers, she couldn't help but feel a pang of curiosity about the mysterious Isabel. The staff often spoke of her beauty and charm, but Sophie had never met her. The day of Isabel's arrival, the household staff lined up at the grand entrance, eager to welcome her home. Sophie stood among them, her heart pounding with anticipation. As the sleek black car pulled up, everyone held their breath. The car door opened, and out stepped a tall, elegant woman. Isabel was everything the staff had described and more. Her presence was captivating, her smile radiant. As she walked up the steps, she greeted each staff member warmly, making her way down the line. When she reached Sophie, Isabel paused. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. "Sophie?" Isabel whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. The staff exchanged puzzled glances, wondering how Isabel knew their humble housemaid. Sophie, equally stunned, could barely find her voice. "Isabel?" Sophie replied, her voice barely a whisper. The two women stared at each other, a flurry of emotions passing between them. Finally, Isabel enveloped Sophie in a tight hug, tears streaming down her cheeks. The staff watched in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. Mrs. Kensington, who had been observing from the doorway, stepped forward, her face a mask of confusion. "Isabel, what is going on?" she demanded. Isabel pulled back from the hug, her eyes still fixed on Sophie. "Mother, this is Sophie, my sister." Gasps echoed through the hall as the revelation sank in. The staff, the Kensingtons, everyone was stunned. Mrs. Kensington's face went pale, and she stumbled back, needing to sit down. "You mean to tell me?" Mrs. Kensington's voice trailed off, unable to finish her sentence. Sophie took a deep breath, finally finding the strength to speak. "It's true. Isabel and I are sisters. Our father, he had another family before he met your husband." Mrs. Kensington looked from Isabel to Sophie, the pieces slowly coming together. She had always known her husband had a complicated past, but she never imagined it would lead to this moment. Isabel took her mother's hand. "I found out when I was in Paris. I did some research, and I discovered Sophie. I wanted to tell you in person." Sophie nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've known for a while, but I never wanted to disrupt your lives. I just needed to be close to my sister, even if she didn't know who I was." The room was silent as everyone absorbed the shocking news. Mrs. Kensington, finally recovering from the initial shock, stood up and walked over to Sophie. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked softly. Sophie shrugged, her eyes downcast. "I didn't want to cause trouble. I just wanted to be near my family." Mrs. Kensington took Sophie's hands in hers, a small smile playing on her lips. "You are family. And you always will be." As the weeks passed, the Kensingtons and Sophie began to rebuild their relationships. Isabel and Sophie grew closer, making up for lost time. The household staff, once shocked and confused, now embraced Sophie as one of their own, knowing that family, in all its forms, is what truly matters. The revelation of Sophie's true identity sent ripples throughout the Kensington household and the small town they resided in. The gossip mill churned relentlessly, but within the walls of the Kensington mansion, a new chapter was unfolding. Isabel and Sophie began to spend more time together, sharing stories of their childhoods. Isabel's life had been one of privilege and opportunity, with the best education, travels around the world, and a promising career in fashion. Sophie's, on the other hand, had been marked by struggle and sacrifice, working multiple jobs to support her younger siblings and keep a roof over their heads. One evening, as they sat in Isabel's room, reminiscing over old photographs, Isabel turned to Sophie with a serious expression. "There's so much I don't know about you, Sophie. I want to understand everything." Sophie smiled warmly, touched by Isabel's genuine interest. "Ask me anything." Isabel hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Tell me about our father. What was he like?" Sophie's smile faded slightly as she thought back to the man who had shaped her life in so many ways. He was a good man, kind and hardworking. But he made mistakes. He had a family before he met your mother, and, when things got complicated, he chose to leave. Isabel nodded, her eyes filled with empathy. "That must have been so hard for you." "It was," Sophie admitted. "But I don't blame him. Life is complicated, and people make choices they think are best at the time." As they continued to talk, Sophie shared stories of her childhood, the tough times and the small joys. Isabel listened intently, her respect and admiration for Sophie growing with each passing story. Meanwhile, Mrs. Kensington struggled with her own feelings about the revelation. She had always prided herself on her family, her home, and the life she had built. Learning about Sophie had shaken her to the core, but she knew she had to find a way to accept this new reality. One afternoon, she invited Sophie to join her for tea in the garden. Sophie, though nervous, accepted the invitation, hoping for a chance to bridge the gap between them. As they sipped their tea, Mrs. Kensington spoke first. "Sophie, I want to thank you for being so understanding. This can't have been easy for you." Sophie shook her head. "It's been a lot to process, for all of us. But I'm grateful to have found my sister and to be a part of this family, even if it's under unexpected circumstances." Mrs. Kensington nodded, her expression softening. "I've been thinking a lot about what family means. It's not just about blood, it's about love, support, and understanding. You've shown incredible strength and grace, and I want you to know that you're welcome here." Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." As months turned into years, the new family dynamic settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sophie continued to work for the Kensingtons, but her role evolved. She became more involved in managing the household, her keen sense of responsibility and natural leadership shining through. Isabel, inspired by her sister's resilience, started a charity focused on supporting underprivileged families. She often collaborated with Sophie, using their combined experiences to make a real difference in the community. One warm summer evening, the Kensingtons hosted a grand garden party, inviting friends, family, and neighbors to celebrate the successes of the past year. Sophie, dressed in a beautiful gown gifted by Isabel, mingled with the guests, her confidence and grace evident to all. As the evening drew to a close, Isabel raised a glass to make a toast. "To family," she began, her voice ringing clear through the garden. "To love, resilience, and the bonds that hold us together, no matter how unexpected they may be. Here's to new beginnings and the incredible journey we've all shared." Everyone raised their glasses, cheers and applause filling the air. Sophie looked around at the smiling faces, her heart full. She had found more than just a sister, she had found a home, a family, and a future filled with hope and possibility. Thank you so much for watching this video. I put a link down below about something very interesting you'll like. Go check that out. Subscribe for more daily content. See you on the next one.